Smoke-free Sunak's plan to ban our kids buying cigarettes starts its journey into law today. The Tobacco and Vapes Bill means anyone turning 15 this year or younger will never legally be sold a packet of fags, giving us some of the toughest anti-tobacco laws in the entire world. The bill will also try to turn children off vaping as well, bringing in new powers to restrict vape flavours and packaging that is intentionally marketed at children. Joining me now, though, is the spokesperson for the UK Vaping Industry Association, Dr Marina Murphy. Marina, welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Nice to see you. It's all a bit confusing, this bill, because it seems to me that Rishi Sunak saw what they were doing in New Zealand, which I think was originally brought in by Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, and I think they've now backed away from it and they're not sort of doing it anymore, because it's kind of mad, isn't it, to say to somebody who's born in 2009, you will always have to ask somebody else to get cigarettes for you, even if you're 50 years old, because that's effectively what they've done, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you say is correct. They did originally conceive of this type of policy in New Zealand, but as you say, they've decided that it was problematic to try and implement it, not least because of things like a black market.
Right.
And again, you also make a good point about the so-called objective being to prevent children from smoking. But this, you know, and it's a prohibition, so let's just call it a prohibition.
Yeah.
This prohibition doesn't stop any child from smoking. It will only ever stop adults.
Right.
So in my view, it's not going to do what it's supposedly intended to do. It will only, I think, impinge on the freedom of adults.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Because a lot of people have said today, when I've been hearing the various arguments being made, is that, you know, as long as cigarettes are legal, as long as tobacco is a legal substance, you know, what exactly right have you got to ban it? You know, because they've banned drugs, haven't they? But, you know, apparently Britain is now the cocaine capital of Europe. So, you know, there's not any difficulty. In fact, I think I read a story the other week saying that you can get cocaine delivered to your house faster than pizza now. So, I mean, you know, outlawing things doesn't really work, does it?
Well, and you're either an adult or you're not an adult. I mean, there shouldn't be degrees of adulthood.
Right.
It should be the case that if a product is legal, you should be able to have it. And also, I think it's kind of a pointless policy when you think about it, because the market is actually doing what they say that this policy will do. The market is pushing cigarettes out. I mean, at the moment, I think we have the lowest level of smoking that we've ever had in this country, and we have the highest level of quitting.
Right.
And e-cigarettes have been really important, if not the most important quit aid in this country. So the market is already doing that.
Is it also a case of, you know, because cigarettes are so expensive, largely because of the tax that is collected on them, that people are taking cheaper options? For example, whether it's vaping or whether it's actually e-cigarettes or whether it's just buying, like you say, black market cigarettes. I mean, I used to smoke up until about, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, and I used to know loads of people who would go down to certain shops in certain parts of London and buy packets of cigarettes for £4. You know, I never did it because I didn't really fancy doing it, but, you know, I assume that that's still a burgeoning market, and nobody really knows how many people are using it, right?
Well, the price point has always been really important, and I mean, most of the people who smoke, you know, are not the most wealthy people in the country, we'll say. And in order to help somebody like that to move from a product and a behaviour that they understand to something that they don't necessarily understand, I think you have to offer them an option that's cheaper in addition to being convenient, accessible, and that they like as well.
And what about the vaping industry? What does this do to the vaping industry, if anything?
Well, this bill, you know, obviously everybody's been waiting on tenterhooks to see what's in the bill, but the bill doesn't actually prescribe any specific measures. But what it does do, and what I think is quite worrying, is it gives sweeping powers to the Secretary of State, or I suppose more correctly, as civil servants, which means that ultimately they can do what they want down the line with very little scrutiny. And the other thing that I think is problematic about this bill is the sort of indecent haste. You know, we've been waiting, everybody's been waiting, and then you have the first reading today, and in the normal scheme of things, you would have a couple of weeks. I mean, people need to be able to read this bill, understand it. It was published today. And so they're going to have a second reading, as I understand it, tomorrow.
Right.
So that seems to me to be
so it feels like they're rushing it through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, rushed legislation can never be good legislation.
No. Also, it seems a bit odd, given all the problems that Britain's got right now, that this is the one thing they want to focus on, and they want to sort of, you know, put their marker down and say, this is what we did. We stopped people smoking in Britain. Well, so what?
I mean, it's almost distraction tactics, I would say. I mean, look what's going on with the Rwanda bill.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think they're basically sacrificing vapors for votes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they've made a big bang about it. They're, you know, talking it in the media and bigging it up, saying that this bill is designed to stop children vaping. Now, nobody wants children to be vaping,
Right.
but the fact is that children aren't supposed to be vaping. It's,
Right.
it's illegal for anybody who's under 18
but children
to vape.
can buy vapes.
They can.
And people can sell them to
Well,
them.
they are, but that's the point again.
But it may well be illegal, but that's never stopped them before. I mean,
Well,
you know, I think I had my first cigarette when I was 11.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
most people do.
Yes, they
And that
do.
was illegal as well.
They do.
And it was from my mother's cigarette packet.
Yeah.
And she found out and she wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, kids will do things whether you like it or not.
Well, kids and teenagers specifically, I suppose, like to take risks.
Yeah.
And you bring in laws, you know, so that you can reduce the impact of those risks or reduce the likelihood of them taking those risks. Now, those laws already exist. And if you can't enforce that law, how are you going to enforce all these other potential laws that they bring in? If you cannot stop an 18-year-old vaping now, how are you going to stop a 25-year-old or a 40-year-old? And then put people in the ridiculous position whereby the 39-year-old can't buy a cigarette, but their 40-year-old friend can go into the shop and buy a cigarette for them. I mean, trading standards have better things to do than police.
I mean, our shop owner's supposed to go, I think you're 39 as opposed to 40, so therefore I'm not going to sell them to you. No, they're not. But what about the difference between the vapes? Because when they sort of first announced this, they were trying to make out that there are certain vapes that they're against. Yeah. They're not against all vapes. Is that your position as well, or what's your position on that?
Well, I mean, obviously they focus down on disposable vapes because, as we know, that they will be banned, but it'll be a different
But they're more likely to be used by the teenagers, are they?
Well, if you look at the statistics, in the scheme of things, there's only a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent almost of vapor or teenagers who actually use vapes at all. But we're focusing down on that tiny number as opposed to looking at the bigger picture and thinking about what these vapes are intended for and the success that we've had in this country. You know, we're leading the way in tobacco harm reduction. And like I said, we have the highest quit rates, and there are already laws in place that are supposed to be tackling this small number in the scheme of things.
Well, as you say, it's already illegal, isn't it?
Yes, it's already illegal, so enforce that law.
Right.
Enforce that law.
But are there specific types of vapes, I suppose is what I'm asking you, that you would rather, as an official from the sort of the vaping authority, if you like, that you would rather not see being sold?
Absolutely. I mean, there are products that are clearly, I suppose you would call them inappropriate. I mean, there's no need to have a vape that looks like a Pokemon or a Barbie doll. Right. I don't think that's necessary. I would argue, though, on the other side, that it's absolutely necessary to have flavours. I don't know why people are in denial that adults like flavours. Yes. So I think flavours is a must, but something like a product that looks like a toy, that's not necessary. And it's not legal, but the way things are at the moment, the MHRA, which is the regulatory authority, doesn't have to approve the packaging. Right. So that's something that could be improved.
And obviously, you know, like a lot of these things, you know, the trend moves and it moves on. And like a lot of young women have always smoked because they think it helps them to keep their weight down and they don't want to eat so much. And maybe vaping has the same effect on people. But I've got a 17-year-old son who did vape for a bit and has now given up. So he's now a veteran of it. And he says, I don't really like it. And a lot of his friends have done the same. You know, they thought it was cool when they were 15. Yeah. But now when they're 17, they don't think it is. Yeah. So, you know, all of this legislation seems to me to be very undemocratic, really.
Well, it's kind of virtue signalling, I think, at the end of the day. A lot of it is not going to achieve, like I said, what they say they want to achieve, which is take vapes out of the hands of children. But you don't solve that problem by taking them out of the hands of adults. Yes. Adults who are entitled to have them if they want to have them and should be able to have them if they want to, say, switch or give up cigarettes.
Exactly. And what about the long-term damage? Because people don't know that much about long-term damage of vapes because people haven't been smoking them or using them
vaping them.
Sorry.
Vaping them.
I don't even have the lingo. So what's being done about that? I mean, is there anything that you can tell us about projects that have been worked on, research that's being done?
Well, there's a lot of research that has been done in the past 20 years. And even here in the UK, if you look at University College London, they do a lot of research on e-cigarettes. And you have London South Bank University, you have Queen's College. There's an awful lot of research being done in this country. So I don't think it's true to say that we don't know, anything. We don't know everything, but we do know a lot.
And
I
you
think,
would say categorically it's better than smoking?
well, I mean, I don't even have to say it. You just have to look at what Cancer Research UK says.
Yeah.
They say it's better than smoking. If you look at what OIHID, which previously was Public Health England, if you look at what they say,
Yeah.
they stay and they have stuck to their guns. They've said that 95% safer than a cigarette. Now, something that's 95% safer, that doesn't mean that it's not, you know, that it is risk-free, sorry. It's not fresh air. So there is a level of risk, but the point is it's the comparative risk and what is the difference in your risk if you were a smoker versus if you were to switch to vaping.
Yes, absolutely.